Peace and Black Power family. It's Brother IJ Taimba from Harlem Liberation School, where we teach Black people, New Africans, however you want to frame it, to wake up, clean up, and stand up in the words of Baba, our great ancestor, uh, Brother Malcolm X. We are in the middle. Actually, we're at the conclusion. Sister Nwasha is our last highlighted sister, and we're very proud to say that we started something called the Community Empowerment Series, in which we are highlighting, spotlighting, paying tribute to, honoring our sisters in our village that pour love and service into our village in a various amount of ways. And if any of you have been following the series and seen all these dynamic Black women we brought here, it's really mind-blowing. We've had educators, jazz singers, we had poets, we've had, just phenomenal. We had a Mama Yabaruti and just so many really powerful sisters, just showing us that our sisters are doing it in every way imaginable. And something I often say to our community is that when we talk about, we need to have relationship therapists that look like us, we need engineers, we need farmers, I quickly tell them, we have those people in everything you can name. We got Africans, New Africans there. Trust and know it. We just may not know. It's just a matter of connecting. But our people have come from a situation where we were prohibited to read and write, family, didn't know how to spell our names, to a situation where we are running business, we are teaching, we're educating, we're helping heal. It's really miraculous if you stop for a minute and think about from whence we've come to where we are now, because of and in spite of, right? And today we're continuing and ending, actually, that Community Empowerment Series with another powerful sister, Sister Nwasha Edu. Now, Sister Nwasha, I have a whole bio, but I found that people were more engaged when I kind of spoke kind of directly from the heart and mind. She's part of a duo, family, that is really unbelievable in terms of the service they provide. They help us with our relationships, family. And all of us need help. We may not want to admit it. We may seem to the public like we all got it going on, but we know that there's issues, right? And that's natural. It's just that in our case, because we've been through some serious intergenerational trauma and post-slavery syndrome, post-traumatic slavery syndrome, we have a unique set of issues that other people may or may not have. And so this sister here and her husband, Montsho, first of all, they took a day, I believe it's called Black Love Day, by an elder named Sister Ayo Handy-Kendy, if I'm correct, or Kendu. And they took that and kind of created Akoma Day, which is sort of a African-centered alternative to Valentine's Day. But in this holiday, family, we ain't got no teddy bears and you got to go pay Godiva all types of money. They're dealing with some real stuff. They have a book on it, and they have a Black love school. They really help us understand what love is supposed to look and feel like, and help us understand a better sense of when we say a real man, a real woman, completely help us reframe that. Their work is invaluable. Anybody that's helping us to do better and be better, all praises due, family. That's what we're after. Liberation is the final objective, but we got to get right, family. As we fight this white man, which we should be doing every day, we have to also get right ourselves, as Asada said, right? So without further ado, I want to bring our good sister on, Sister Nwasha. How you doing, sis?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. How are you doing?
I have no complaints. I am grateful. I'm not even going to get
Ashe.
into that. I'm just so grateful. Yeah.
Ashe.
Yes. So we're glad to have you. You are closing out our very popular, it's become kind of popular, Community Empowerment Series. You're in a list, a line of some powerful sisters that have been on the broadcast. And what we hope to do in Nwasha is combat the narrative that has become very popular in the last 5 to 10 years of blaming, scapegoating Black women for everything wrong in the community. We're trying to completely destroy that narrative. If anything, we bear witness that sisters have been the backbone of our organizations, our spiritual centers, our homes when Dad was mucking up and he was all over the place. A lot of times the sisters were there. So we're really glad you could spend some time with us. I want to get right into it.
Okay.
First of all, let me ask you this. Could you tell us where you grew up, some of the role models, experience that kind of helped you to get this kind of, we got to help our people, this community empowerment spirit?
Well, I grew up in New Jersey, so I'm definitely, Jersey born and raised. And I've grown up in, I'm going to say like, the hood. So I lived in Trenton, Newark, some of the places that are the most urban and have the most Black people. But when I was younger, I also had the opportunity to go live in Brazil. I'm still very much, not in the hood in Brazil, but still very much, in the hood, in the urban environment, the environments that are kind of intentionally disenfranchised. So those types of things absolutely influenced me. Seeing people do for themselves and have these kind of closed communities that are very supportive and, aware of some of the challenges that are going on. And my role models, I definitely did a deep dive after meeting my husband in my early 20s, where my immediate role models were the people that I appreciated the most, the people that I was reading, the people that I was very fortunate to meet and to work with. So that's people like my first initiation was with Queen Afua many decades ago. And then I also had the opportunity to be certified with Dr. Africa. So I worked with him.
Wow.
And I worked with Malidoma Some and Sombofu Some. So all the people that I loved, that I was reading their work, I am really happy to have met and worked with, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing and so many people that I think everything just worked out at the perfect time, that these elders who were still living their mission very much, still active in the community, still being touched by the people who were reading their work, were still offering courses and still educating and still coming to the community. And those are my primary role models that I still reference every day in my work with Montsho.
That's beautiful. Every time I speak to I'm gonna say our most powerful and relevant and dedicated soldiers in this movement, one thing they all have in common was they had good teachers.
Yep, that's how it is. That's how it is.
It's very important.
Yeah, it's a unique time, I think.
And you mentioned some heavyweights. You talking about Lila Africa?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Yes, sir. That's like one of my favorites. He was like my borrowed uncle, brother, father. Definitely did multiple, activities with him where he was my direct teacher. And I think, I feel blessed and grateful that I had the opportunity to get information directly from those people, because I think it's important to connect, so I'm at an age where it was still relevant to be in community with people. And I think it's a blend, on being on the cusp of coming into the time where you can access YouTube and you can, read books and you can get classes. But sometimes when you're not really in community, the theory becomes overwhelming and you lose the practice. So I do think that you got to have a balance of reading a book and actually practicing, because you need to give yourself feedback. And that's what I'm really grateful that I had the opportunity to be live and in the room and work over months with some of my favorite, authors, but actually people who are really committed to their mission. And I got to also see that. So it's one thing to see the work, it's one thing to be taught in a syllabus, but it's another thing to observe a person in their passion and in their dedication to Black people.
Agreed. Definitely agreed. Now, as you see it, what role does African-centered education play in our personal and collective liberation?
It's center. So to me, it's the primary center role. If you don't have a cultural understanding, a cultural philosophy, a cultural education, as our elders have told us, anything else you think you know, you actually don't know, right? So one of our biggest problems, I think, is self-hate. And this is a borrowed, self-hate. Anything else that we try to educate ourselves with, if it's not coming from an African-centered perspective, we're filtering it through some perspective that is anti-Black. So I think that it's vital that we have to have an African-centered education. And I think even that, like what it means to be cultural. Culture is your value system and your belief system. So sometimes, even when people say African centered, Africa is a continent, so their Blackness is all around the world. And if we say that Africa is our, home, it's our original seat of Blackness, we still take the culture with us wherever we go. So it's extremely important that no matter where we find ourselves on the planet, that we recognize the culture is not the country per se, or the language, or the food, the clothing, sometimes the things that we battle over. The culture is the philosophy, the belief system, the value system. And that is there's something innate in us that no matter where we find ourselves, we end up practicing the same core beliefs. That is what has to be at the center of every movement, is that we're taking the cultural perspective that is original and our own, and that we move from that center. So I think it's the most vital thing. It's actually the number one question that I ask before I get into something. Like, what is the foundation? If it's not African-centered, even if you participate, you got to filter everything through your African-centered then.
That's right. That's right. Now, you and your husband Montsho have this Black Love School.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I like the name. It's direct. You know what it's about. There's no confusion.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say are the core principles that guide, your philosophy and your practices at the Black Love School, and how do these reflect your own values?
The core philosophies, well, the first one is psychological reparation. So when it comes to relationships and love, we need healing. So that's number one. And that involves coming back to the belief system and the value system of being Black, right? So African-centered beliefs. The second principle is relationship education. So most of our problems come from a lack of education. So, and this is of course by design. We get educated on a lot of things, especially in Western culture, where education comes easy. The system of education comes easy and free for most of us, but we're miseducated. So many of the challenges that we have could be avoided, cleared up, resolved if we had a certain amount of education around relationships. So how to get into them, how to vet, how to communicate, how to resolve conflict. If we actually learned how to do that, we could improve our relationships. And then finally, the final element is cultural initiation. So this is the practice. This is why we say we're the Akoma House Initiative. You have to actually initiate something in yourself. And initiation is the highest form of knowing for Black people. So beyond the theory of education, it is now go do this thing. And there's nothing beats, doing. Even a child without reading, without theory, if you do something a couple of times, you will give your own self feedback because of that, innate force that's in us. We're going to be able to refine and improve. So I think that, if you can do those three things, and that's what we base every class on, every offer on, every cohort on, is there's some aspect of healing, some aspect of education, and then there's some aspect of actually doing, which is the initiation. And then that, into the details, that involves a Black cultural understanding of what it means to do ritual, what it means to set up systems, what it means to rely on the seen and the unseen. So we have many more tools at our disposal than any other people on the planet because of our frequency and our history and our legacy. So those are the things that we share in the Black Love School.
That's very interesting. Now, something you said a lot of things we weren't taught, which we know. And Miss Wilson said that for white supremacy to work, we have to be out of our minds, right?
Yes.
We have to be backwards. We have to be dysfunctional for that to work. So it makes sense that we were conditioned and miseducated.
Right.
But it almost sounds like a lot of our people, when they think of skills, they think of carpentry, plumbing, building a home, and they don't think that relationships require skills. Could you elaborate on that for us?
Yeah, I think that this is part of the fantasy of relationships. And so this is the negative aspect of what we are taught through movies and fairy tales and comic books and pornography. Like a whole bunch of stuff is teaching us that relationships are supposed to be this kind of magical thing from a detached perspective. Black people historically know that magic, or what involves, material manipulation through the unseen, that is not fake. So thinking about something can help it manifest and definitely guide your, habits. Cultivating something like planting, seeding, right? Like waiting for something to sprout, there's an element that's unseen. So Black people have always known that you can really do magic. Or magic is like what we say sometimes in relationships is, I'm waiting for the chemistry. There's no skills. I'm just waiting for the magic and the chemistry. But chemistry is a science. Magic was a science for Black people. So I think it is part of the miseducation, because in any other area of life, we know that we need to develop skills. So at work, even in relationships, for business relationships, people know I got to learn how to network. I got to learn how to make a great elevator pitch in the first 2 minutes. Like, we know those things when it comes to, I need to be sharp if I'm going to be in sales. I need to write well if I'm going to be an author. I need to know the top 10, 20 people if I'm going to really be able to move through whatever industry. When it comes to the personal relationship, though, that's when we're like, it's got to be private. And we falsely believe that if it's not this kind of magical presentation or this kind of, fantasy, miscalled romantic presentation, that then it doesn't mean anything. Like, if I have to tell you something, if I have to learn a skill, then somehow it's not going to be as fulfilling. And I think that it's the miseducation from, especially in America, from movies and television and soap operas, like all the things that we wrongly consume when we're very young, lead us to having a subconscious action when it comes to relationships. And so I think, in most conversations, we would say, well, I know I need a skill if I'm going to do something efficiently and effectively. But in relationships, we're just we're very passive with it. And this is part of the challenge, because once one thing presents that calls for a bigger, better skill set, we typically end a relationship when we never needed to end the relationship. We actually needed to up-level our skill set.
Wow, that's a deep breakdown. Hope you all are listening live now or in the later recorded version. This is some real talk, family. We've been miseducated, and this is one of the key areas right here. This whole, my stomach is bubbling and I got butterflies. Like, yeah, okay. But is that the man that's going to help you raise your children successfully?
Right.
Teach them proper values? Is that the woman that you'll be able to confide in and will be able to counsel you? These are the questions that we typically don't answer. In fact, I would even argue, Sister Nwasha, partly joking but partly serious, that we put more time into deciding what type of cars we're going to get, the features and this and that, and we don't really think about, besides he's fine and she's curvy, like what, right?
I agree.
That's kind of crazy.
I say it all the time. People put more effort into what they're going to eat for lunch, let alone like buy a car. We put more effort into what we want to eat for one meal sometimes than really setting up for a relationship. And I think, this is why we get some of the results that we get. But I think it is partially, like primarily by design, right? It's also up to us to recognize when we're getting the feedback of failed relationships, or when we do leave a relationship because of the conflict and we move on to the next relationship and have the same conflict. We have to learn that it can't be the other 5 people and 10 people and 20 people. When I find myself in a pattern, just like I would do with my health, with my business, with my career, I need to be the one to make a change. And this area of life, to me, is very unique in that we don't tend to put things together that way. we tend to reflect outward with the all women are this and all men are this and there's nobody's out here being serious. It's always the external view when it comes to the intimate relationship, but other times it's clearly us, right? And we look to remove ourselves, or we look to up level our skills in an area, or link with new people in an area. But when it's the intimate relationship, it's very unique. But I think it's because we're playing to really old stories. And some of the things that we're craving in the intimate relationship, we don't even realize we're craving it to satisfy old needs. So the thing that I didn't get when I was younger becomes this kind of thing that I'm obsessed about in my reflection, my intimate partnership, that keeps me outwardly focused on that person versus inwardly focused on why I even want this, whatever it is, the curviness or the security. Why do I even want that to begin with? That is something that's one of the reasons why we need the psychological repair, because you have to go into something as well as you can, but not harping on being perfect. Because sometimes I find that people either are completely clueless and delusional and in the fantasy, or they're so rigid that they're looking to be perfect themselves before they get into a partnership. And that's impossible. The purpose of the partnership is actually to perfect your character. So there is no such thing as character perfection without other people giving you feedback. And that goes until you die, right? Until you make a transition.
That's right. I actually have a piece in my book, Ukusu, or Self-Empowerment Handbook, where we're talking about who am I? And the person does their little tests and they do their thing. But then they have to take a sheet of questions and give it to 5 to 10 people who know them well on their job, school, home, or whatever to give them feedback. Because you can't be the only one looking at yourself, right? So that's very important.
Yeah. Now, and do you even know yourself, right? Do you even know yourself without other people? No, you don't.
That's right.
Actually.
Now, the queen asks, she, by the way, said to tell you hello. She wants to know, what are your thoughts about relationships and trauma? And specifically, she's talking about having healthy relationships after experiencing trauma or dysfunctional relationships.
Trauma, everyone's gone through trauma. All Black people anywhere in the world have gone through trauma just by default of being in an oppressive system. Like Dr. Frances Cress Welsing said, you don't even get a break from racism in your dream. You can't even dream without being oppressed, right? Because we're speaking English, we don't know ourselves, we're eating at the wrong time. You know, there is no such thing as not having trauma. I think that what we have to learn how to do is to relieve ourselves and heal. And sometimes people are thinking that they've been through too much trauma to be in a relationship, or that they're in a sense like a trauma magnet. And that's not perpetual. So just because something has happened in the past doesn't mean that it has to happen in the present or the future. It is possible to work through different kinds of trauma. And I think it's very beneficial to have a partner, because you have a person, much like you said, we are sometimes hard on ourselves. When you go out and ask those 5 people and 10 people, who am I? One thing you're also going to get is some of the strengths that you overlook. You know, some of the things that you've been able to turn around that you take for granted, another person's going to recognize those easily because they haven't built that strength yet. So I think it's so important for us to know everyone has some trauma. And no one's absolved from that in this time. And we still actually need all relationships. So intimate relationships, family, community, you know, social relationships, because we need the feedback about who we are to improve. And like the Someys told us, Malidoma Some and Sombofu Some, you have gone through challenges that develop your character in a way that is extremely unique, where whatever you have been through, because you have survived it, there's something that developed in you that is for the community. So if you can reframe things that you've been through as, what did I get from this? And then what could I offer? The worst of the worst situations, there is some skill set that's built in you because of that. So people who've been abused, people who've been physically abused, sexually abused, emotionally abused, tend to have a keen sense for abusive people. They tend to, even as if they were abused as children, these tend to be the people that grow up to be police officers, firefighters, social workers, teachers, because what they're saying is, I know the bad as soon as I see it. I can almost sniff it out. So I'm going to become a protector of the children that when nobody was protecting me, right? So if we, as one of my teachers told me, you have to sift, scoop up all of the crap of your life and then sift it and pan for the gold. If you can find those gold nuggets, then you can say, okay, this happened to me and I built this skill around it. I got some experience. I built this survival mechanism. And now because of that, I can do this other thing. And if you can do that, you make use of the trauma where it doesn't like just stop and stay with you, but it actually becomes reframed as part of a life journey. So now it's not right to be abused, definitely when you're abused as a child. And at the same time, it's happening all the time. So when something happens, another philosophy in Black culture is everything happens for a reason. Even the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst, like us forgetting who we are, the reason for that is so we remember. That idea of reclaiming and Sankofa and remembrance is so important that the only way to remember is to have forgotten first. So for the benefit of remembering, you must have had to forget. So we sometimes in the middle of forgetting, we're like, what's the purpose of this? It's chaotic, it's disgusting. And that's true. But then we come on the other side, we say, I appreciate this so much more, right? Because of what I have been through. And I would never know this feeling without the other feeling. And this kind of polarity, like moving ourselves along the spectrum of a trauma, a character flaw, challenge, a strength, that is what our relationships help us do. So if we have a dysfunctional relationship, much like we had any other dysfunctional system, we need to be able to say, what is our main problem? And, you know, most problems are going to be communication problems, harmonizing problems, or conflict resolution problems. If you can learn a skill that helps you communicate better, and that's just not talking, that's also listening. And it's also taking action. After you talk and after you listen, what do you do, right? If you can speak better, listen better, and take better action, you improve your communication problems. If you know why you're acting and you can understand why another person's acting, you can improve your harmonizing problems. And we use Ma'at to work through conflict. So if you have some higher order system to work through all conflict, what we teach people is you have to have a conflict contract. If you can work through a conflict contract, much like you do at work and much like you do in other areas of life, you can say, we disagree, we have a problem, but here are the steps to resolution. And that is going to be how you get the function, back in dysfunctional. We're all going to be dysfunctional to some measure, but it's a matter of how do you manage it while it's happening? And then how do you up level it afterwards? Because what a lot of couples do, they have the same fight over and over and over and over. The same harmonizing problem over and over and over and over, or the same communication problem over and over and over and over. And if that is one of your deal breakers, it'll end the relationship.
That's very interesting, very informative. I'm curious to know. I'm going off script with my questions just once here. I'm curious to know, what are your thoughts on this issue of compatibility? So that is to say, are there some Africans that just shouldn't be together?
Well,
or are we saying that people can go through these steps, they can be humble and they can work on themselves and communication, and they can resolve issues that might otherwise seem unresolvable? Is that?
We teach the science of soulmating. So there are literal soulmates in Black culture. The idea of a man and a woman being one and then separating into life and then reunifying in material world. That's a soulmate, that you were together in the celestial realm before you were conceived. But after conception and birth and you being a physical human being, you can meet again and reunify. So that's you finding your soulmate. But the art and science of soulmating means I can learn certain things and practice that with any person who would be complementary. So that's men and women are complementary, so we can be together. Now, what's also true is everybody has a personality. So we kind of have a heart print, is what I call it, like your fingerprint. You are coming with a personality to the planet. Now, part of that is innate, and that's going to be your, heart's desire, your dreams, your God-given talent, so to speak. But then there's an aspect of you that your soul goes on a journey, and you're developing a personality based on what language do you speak, where do you live, who are your parents, what kinds of trouble came to you to help cultivate your personality. And in that, there are some people who should not be together. So when you make the choices and say, I'm choosing this person because of XYZ, that is not about your values, then chances are it's going to be difficult, right? Because you're making a choice about who to be with that has nothing to do with what actually means the most to you. In that, though, there are no fixed situations. So at any moment, anyone can change. So for me, there's an element of no two people come together that spirit doesn't want together. That's what Sombofu Some said. If you came together, then there's some lesson to learn, because part of Black culture teaches that things are written already. There's divine order, so all of that comes into play. When you meet someone, there's some reason for you to come together. That's why you got to pan for the gold, because you have to say, I met this person so that I can learn how to communicate. Because if you don't pan for the gold, you can separate all you want to, and the same situation will come, because it's about your character development. So if you are walking on eggshells and you don't want to communicate, that's going to be your first marriage. That's going to be your second marriage. That's going to be your third marriage, if you're lucky to get 3 people to marry you, right? But if you are the one who has to make a change. But part of coming together could be, that's the only way you would have learned that lesson, is through that person giving you the feedback about yourself and kind of like pulling something out of you. So there are really people who it would present a conflict for them to be together. Now, what people present to us is like, I'm a morning person and he's a night person. That's not that big of a deal. What you could say is, I can give this person, now this is the harmonizing, I can give this person space to be the night person. They can give me space to be the morning person, and we meet in the afternoon, right? But that's not what we do. We say, you got to get up when I get up, or you got to stay up until I go to bed. And that is the part that creates a conflict. So we can have personality differences, and they can be perfectly fine if we're willing to harmonize around the most important things. Because whatever you tend to be attracted to something that you don't have. So if you're a quiet person, you tend to be attracted to the person who's really, vibrant and extroverted. If you're the extroverted person, you tend to be captivated by a person who's self-contained, mysterious, and very inward, right? But as soon as you get together, you wrongly want your partner to be just like you after you were really attracted to the complementary energy. So that's what sometimes people say is conflict. It's really complementary energy. It's not opposites per se. But because we can't really see past our point of reference, it feels like contention, when it's really just a spectrum of, when do you want to be up? You want to be up in the morning? You want to be up at night, right? So that's what we have to learn how to do, is harmonize.
Now, I guess in certain ways, you may have already answered this. So what I'm going to go is to this question. Beyond the work you do with couples, how do you see your teachings and you modeling your teachings as influencing broader community healing and empowerment?
Well, I think relationships, and even the relationship conversation, it sometimes gets limited to couples. Now, couples definitely are the foundation of a nation, because you're going to have children. You're going to even support the children if you don't have children. You're going to build little neighborhoods and communities, and that becomes a nation. But I think we hold relationships down to a kind of fantasy or false kind of romanticism, right? So we don't use the word romantic because, of course, we're looking for something that's African-centered. If we left the highest level of love to Rome, we would be eliminating thousands and
Debauchery.
thousands and thousands of years
Yeah,
of us coming together, right?
that's right.
But I sometimes use the word and say it's false because that's what other people are using, right? Because we speak English and people are saying, I want a romantic relationship, but they're limiting their understanding. What we have to understand is you first have a relationship with yourself in your journey, right? But truly, the first relationship is your relationship with the Most High. So for Black people are spiritual. Black people are the people who believe in God the most, right? We have a relationship with that first self that's in us, that talks to us. That's our intuition, that's our conscious, that's our God given self that's helping us breathe and digest and blink and all of those things. That's kind of like the container for our morality and our heartfelt energy. So, relationships, we have to learn how to communicate to our own self, right? You have to say the right things to your own self. You have to follow through with your own actions. You have to listen to your own heart's desire before you can even listen to somebody else's. You have to harmonize your own schedule because how many times do we break our own word to ourselves? With what we're going to do, how we're going to take care of ourselves, what we're going to learn, what we're going to be about, who we're going to reach out to. So, relationship work and skill building goes very, very, very far because you have your relationship with the Most High, the relationship with the unseen, like your ancestors, even the relationship with your future line. If you have children, I right now have a relationship with my great, 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 great grandchildren. I don't know it yet in the material, but if my children have children and they have children, potentially, whether it's my name, Montsho's name, whether it's some philosophy that is still moving from Akoma Day in the Black Love School, I have some relationship with my future line. And I obviously am the product of my past line, my parents and grandparents and great grandparents and great, 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 great greats. So relationships sometimes get a superficial banner, but there is nothing that we do where we're not relating in some way with nature, with life, with the Most High, with our past, with our future, with ourself. So we really need to know those skills so that we're not lost and either too hard on ourselves or lost and delusional in something that will never exist. There's a difference between the unseen that is Black, there's more unseen than seen. Right. So even science will tell you this now. Under a microscope, you can look at what you think is just empty air and it's full of stuff, right? There's more unseen than seen, but then there's also fake unseen, right? Like if you go too deep into virtual reality, you've created something that is not just the unseen reality. It's just not real, right? So we have to be careful and really be able to say, that relationship means everything in every way that I relate with anything, right? In my material existence, but also in the Black version of what is unseen. So the immaterial existence, which is ancestors, future progeny, my thoughts are unseen, but I'm relating with them. And that's what's important. We have a superficial gender war conversation about relationships, but relationships are so much more than that. And it's influencing every moment of every day because we're remembering our parents, our grandparents, we're remembering teachers that we had when we were younger, we're thinking of people that we want to see. And all of that is existing in us as a form of relationship. So I think that the work that we do, it has a very wide ripple effect. And it's also very deep. It's very profound, if you can imagine, so the water ripple is going to go far, but it's also going to go very deep. And we have to care about this because we have a legacy, whether we know it or not. We're always creating a legacy. A person's going to walk away from us with an impression about us and about themselves from relating to us. And that's something that we should be intentional about rather than matter of fact and, thinking about it afterwards or not thinking about it at all.
Now, we know that both you and your husband are proudly African centered. That's important to us at Harlem Liberation School for sure. Curious to know, how do you incorporate African cultural traditions and wisdom into your, let's say, your workshops and your classes?
There are fundamental principles like Ma'at, fundamental principles like cultural correction, re-Africanization, decolonizing. That's in every single thing that we offer. So every book that we've written, every course that we've written, every group mastermind and coaching, we believe that if we can reorient, then a lot of our challenges would resolve. So that's primary. It's the foundation of everything that we do. The foundation of everything we do is being African centered. So now, as we were talking shortly before we came on, sometimes people don't even know that they need that. Again, because of miseducation and, anti-Blackness. Sometimes people don't know that they need that. So what we tell people is, you want to be happy in relationships, right? And then this is how you actually be happy, is to reorient to your culture. And once people, because of that first self that's in you, once you see the truth in some way, you resonate with it. Our challenge is all of the smoke and mirrors and the miseducation that keeps us from ever seeing the truth or hearing the truth. But once you actually hear the truth, that African centered again is not the conversation about whose rice is better and which dashiki print is better, right? It's really about, I make the rice this way because of my belief system. I wear this print because I've decided that it means something based on my values. When we can recognize that African centered is about values, then I think that it makes it more obvious that that has to be the foundation.
So a large part of your work is the invisible things, kind of the way we think in our consciousness. How would you respond to
Absolutely.
that?
The primary thing that's motivating most of our behavior is our belief system. So this is the communication to yourself. Your whatever you believe about the world, about yourself, about men, about women, about marriage, about parenting, everything that you believe is what frames your approach to it and what you believe your potential from it would be. And that is your internal communication. So you can give someone all of the skills around diet and health and wellness. If they don't believe that they can work out, that they have the time, that they can meal prep, that they can afford the gym, then you can give them the best workout in the world and they'll still be 100 pounds overweight. Right? If a person believes that I can do this and I must do this, they will work out outside for free and lose the 100 pounds, right? So it's not about the skill actually comes after your ability to believe that you can activate the skill and that having the skill would be beneficial to you. You can get anything, but if you don't believe in it or you don't believe it would work for you, then it's not going to work. So that's absolutely the unseen, because off of presentation and on paper, a person can say that they believe something or even want something in relationships, but by their behavior, you can understand what they believe.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I'm sorry, my
No
computer
problem.
cord came out. Do not want to lose power. All right, all right. Now, who are some of you named some giants in our community? Both of whom are no, one of whom is deceased.
And the
And I know
Somays
that
actually made a transition too.
Queen Afua.
Maladoma Some and his ex-wife Sombofu Some that wrote The
Oh,
Spirit of Intimacy. They both made a transition, and so did Dr. Africa.
yes, yes. I was wondering.
And for Dr. Francis Cress Welsing also.
Yes, yes. I was wondering, who are some of your key Jegnas, or the white man would say mentors, or historical figures who've influenced your philosophy around Black love and relationships?
Actually, it's the same people.
Wow.
Dr. Africa, inside of African Holistic Health, is amazing relationship work. It's amazing conversation about sex, amazing conversation about compatibility with sexual personality, about communication. You know, that book is a masterpiece. So that is some of the best work that I've done in understanding even sexual reflexology is in that book, and also it was in his coursework. So I think that, you know, that's a primary book that's about relationships that taught me many different parts of the, you know, many different categories of relationship. But also Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, I think she talked about Black love and loving your Black self. It's extremely important. And I think her work is foundational to psychological reparation because it's decoding the system that we find ourselves in. The Spirit of Intimacy is an excellent book by Sambofo Some that talks about the purpose of relationships from a spiritual and African spiritual perspective. And Malidoma Some also talked about the importance of ritual and the unseen and what Black people in the Dagara tradition do, but how it relates to Black people in a Pan-African way. So understanding the elements, understanding elemental kind of language, like if someone's being too hot, you can't necessarily always meet fire with fire. Excuse me, you have to meet sometimes fire with earth and put the fire out, or fire with some water. Like there's a science to that elemental energy that is practical in an intimate relationship. So all of these people, amazingly, they talked about relationships, and then I even see some of their greater work as vital for the relationship with yourself, and the relationship that's intimate, and the relationship with your family. Dr. Africa wrote great books for children and family, and diagnosing yourself, how to feed your children, how to talk to your children. And I think, of course, Frances Cress Welsing, she was a child psychologist or psychiatrist originally, right? So the idea of symbolic language and how important that is, I think it's foundational for the way people talk, the way children draw, you know, those internal images that become your identity. Like you mentioned, you know, the thing about identity is it can change, right? But we often feel that it's fixed. So I think all of these teachers, Queen Afua, Dr. Africa, they all taught in a way that you can make a transformation. And that is so important as a person relating to themselves and the Most High and the world. But it's also important in your intimate relationship. Because if you're married, you know, for any long amount of time, Montsho and I have known each other for a couple decades. You're going to have multiple relationships within one relationship because you're going to change, that other person is going to change. So the core thing that brings you together is important, but knowing that your identity is not fixed, right? All of the tiny branches of your identity is not fixed. You're a Black man or a Black woman, and thank God that is fixed because we are the winners, right, in the story. So I'm grateful every day to be a Black woman, but the rest of my personality is not fixed. It's very much like the garments that I wear and the hairstyle that I have. Those things can change, and we want them to change. We have to just learn how to change with it. And all of my guides and teachers, I've seen them change, how they offer, how they move, and how they even relate in their intimate relationships, how they, you know, give the work to us. And I see how they use their work. So if you had a preliminary work that you wrote 20 years ago and 30 years ago, that's a foundation 30 and 20 years ago of what you thought and felt. And when I see someone like Queen Afua, who's still doing Sacred Woman, and now she's doing it like virtually and from coast to coast. And I went, it might've been like 15, 20 people. Now it's like 150 people. This is your core foundation, but you've taught me even how to transform your message, how to keep something going, how to, you know, be fluid in your offering, but stick to your core philosophy and belief system. And I'm very grateful to have had these teachers and to be able to see them over some protracted amount of time.
You know, I'm curious to know what have been, can you maybe think of an experience where you and your husband were working with a couple or in a community group and something very beautiful and endearing came out of it that nobody expected maybe?
I think that happens all the time. Sometimes people come to us in a challenge, because unfortunately, just like our health, sometimes you're like, like you said, if I've got the butterflies and I'm hearing the music in the background, everything's good. Who needs skills, right? But then when you get into a challenge is when you kind of seek out help, unfortunately, right? So a lot of times the thing that I think that's really beautiful is when I see someone change their belief system, like live and in the moment, realize that there's more for me, there's more for this other person, there's more for our relationship than what I had limited myself to. And I think that that is really liberation, freedom, empowerment, to know that we're not victims of our circumstance. We have an active will that we can assess a situation and make changes. And we have, again, like the most capacity to do that in the unseen. Now, in the scene, it's a lot of battling and a lot of people, aiming to keep us from our superpowers. But I think that when I see someone free themselves and really start to loosen, those weeds of having a colonized mindset and a colonized approach to love, that is what I think is really beautiful, because then you realize I don't own this person and they don't own me. I'm really here to have the most fulfilling life. And I can do that if I have better relationships. And when I see that happening, a person breaking free from their limited story, I think that that's something that's really beautiful. But besides that, we've made a lot of friends, over the years that I can say only come from this work and putting ourselves out there. So we've met really great people. And I think that that's a unique blessing. So like even being on this show, right? Like how we can connect around African thought and, Black culture is very big now. It's really back to super Pan-African. Like I can be talking to somebody in South Africa, Ghana, Tanzania, Egypt, all at the same time, and about lifting up Black people everywhere. So that quickening, I also feel, is very beautiful when I see how we come together, who we even work with, how somebody finds us, who's celebrating Akoma Day. I find that to be very beautiful, that the vibration of more and more people wanting to return to their Blackness, even when they don't know anything. They're just like, you know what? I'm just trying for it. I just want to be Black. That to me is amazing in the face of so many people trying to tell you that that's the worst thing in the world. When you say, you know what? I don't care what anybody says. I just want to be around my Black brothers and sisters wherever they are. And I want everything we do to be Black. Whatever we watching, whatever we listen to, whatever we talking about, we got to make up some words, but it's Black dialect, Black culture, then that's what I want to do. And that to me is the most beautiful thing, because I think that we're it's kind of like the daylight. One of my teachers told me, when you are working in the struggle for Black people, it's kind of like you woke up at 3 a.m. and you're like, it's morning, it's 3 a.m., right? But he was like, what happens when a person wakes up at 9 a.m.? The sun's already out, but it's still morning. What happens when a person wakes up at 11 a.m.? It's late, it's kind of close to afternoon, but it's still morning. He was like, what if a person slept all morning and they wake up at 3? They're still awake then, right? So he was like, sometimes when you're awake and you're doing the work, you want everybody to be up at 3. But he was like, when you wake up is when you wake up. So that idea of, it's beautiful to see people waking up, no matter what time it is, whether it's morning, whether it's afternoon, or whether you just slept into the evening, we're all waking up. And that is something that I think is a beautiful thing to watch. And it's a beautiful thing to be a part of. And it's also a beautiful thing to anticipate, like what it's going to look like the next morning, after everyone has awakened.
Wow. Now, I'm curious. One of the things that I teach and encourage people to do is to choose a personal theme song. A song that manifests who they are, who they want to be. A song that when they walk in the room, they want that song playing. My song is Umi Says by Most Def, formerly known as Most Def.
Mm.
I believe that every word of that song, I like, it resonates with me. I'm
Mhm.
curious, Nwasha, what would you say, what would you pick as your personal music?
That is such a hard question. Now, let me tell you, Montsho would probably have like 5 answers, um, because he's so talented with like being a DJ, and he just has all the, lyrics and dates and artists in his mind. But for me, I kind of have like themes that make me feel whatever kind of emotion. So I think a good theme song, I'm not sure, but one of my favorite songs is the Clark Sisters. This is a song that my grandmother used to like. You Brought the Sunshine.
Oh
I
yeah,
love that song. I feel like it,
yeah,
it gives me
that's
chills
classic.
when I hear it because it's like a spiritual kind of song, but it's so
Mm-hmm.
upbeat and so something that I think
Mm-hmm.
resonated with me as a little child. But also, I'm super optimistic. I'm one of those people who is kind of like looking for the sun and looking for the other side of the story and can hold that vision at
Mm-hmm.
3 a.m. I can hold the vision that the sun is coming up. I can see it. I can feel it. So I would say that I really love that song. But I also, uh, I'm really inspired by some of the Brazilian songs from when I used to live in Brazil that were also reclaiming Black culture. So some of the artists like Jorge Benjor, like a lot of people in the 60s, 70s, and 80s who were also reclaiming their Blackness in South America, like that part of the world that suffer the same things here, right? Like the most Black people ended up in Brazil outside of Africa. So that same kind of, we're reclaiming Black culture, and we're talking about it and singing about it and talking about the people who freed themselves. Some of those songs are really great theme songs for me.
Nice, nice. Now, we typically have ended every interview with
Hmm.
this question. I don't want you to think that we trying to make you older than you are, rushing you out. It is not coming from that angle. But I do think that we need to be intentional about our purpose, our life mission, our divine assignment, and our legacy. So the question for you, Nwasha, is what do you see as being the legacy, the dominant legacy that you want to leave on this planet? What would you say?
Wow.
Your life mission, your main driving energy.
I would love to leave a legacy of Black love culture, of really returning to Blackness, having a pure and Black understanding of love as service, and for people to embrace the true beliefs and values of Blackness all around the world. So that's my goal, is to leave a legacy of Black love culture directly, Montsho and I, to our children, but also that this idea of the philosophy that we have in our relationship and how we want to be better and we want to help others, that goes to my grandchildren, and that goes to my great grandchildren, and that even my daughters talk to their friends in a certain kind of way and believe certain things about love that they can teach to their children, who will teach it to their friends. That is really what I want, my legacy to be, is that there is a direct path. There's nothing in between you and the thing that you really want most in love, other than you taking action on developing your skills, that you can have something that's beautiful, fulfilling, and fulfills all your heart's desires, but that is also real and not
Mm,
the delusion or the fantasy. So that is
right.
my ultimate wish. That's my goal. That's what I'm working for, is to really be able to say, anyone who walks away from a conversation with me, an interaction with me, I want them to feel better about themselves as a Black person,
Mm,
and know that they have the goodness of the Most High, wants what is best for them, and that they can take action on getting more of that. That's what I would love to leave.
That's beautiful. And my sister, from where we sit, we're not the ultimate judges, but from where we sit, you are well on your way. This whole series is to shine light on the sisters, to say we see you, we acknowledge your impact. We're grateful for your work, for your optimism, because one of the key things that our enemy does, they want us to be bitter, upset, grumpy, not feeling we can make things happen, that we're just victims or whatever. And so that optimistic spirit, although some think it's corny,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is very powerful. It changes the whole game how you think. So we see all that, my sister. We know that you're working in a team. We don't want our brother to feel left out. We love Brother Montsho. We love you, brother. We're not leaving you out, but we have to highlight our sisters. So we just want to thank you for all you do. If we had $1 million to write to you right now, sister, you'd have $1 million, and all the sisters that have been on the show. We don't have that as of yet, but we do have. We can give love and appreciation. We can give you, if you ever need to get to promote any events, you or Montsho or both of you, let us know. We can do that. That's what we can do. We can support and promote as much as possible.
Thank you. Absolutely. And I think it's really, I'm very grateful that you're highlighting women who are doing work, because there's a spectrum of the way that men do the work, and there's also a spectrum for the way that we as women do the work. And both things are needed, because our community is full of men and women. So sometimes women are going to resonate with the men, sometimes men are going to resonate with the women, but we all have a message, and anyone who's born in this time has work to do in this time. So it's so important for us to see what Black empowerment and liberation looks like on the entire spectrum, so that we also don't come into limited thinking. It's necessary the way that men are doing the work and offering the work. It's also very necessary the way that women are doing the work. And this is our realization, is that the masculine and the feminine belong together. It is actually, this is the science of soulmating, that we're coming together as two parts of a whole. So the way that women think, the way that women work, is important in this time. Even though it's a time that is overshadowed by the negative aspects of masculinity in, the oppressive culture, it's still very important for us to honor the way that Black women think, that Black women work. So like Sombo Fusome, like Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, like Queen Afua, these are people doing high level African-centered work. And because it comes from a woman, and a woman's writing, and a woman's voice, and a woman's delivery, and a woman's movement, and a woman's dress, doesn't make it any less valuable. So I really think that it's very commendable to highlight the women and to have that conversation. And I'm just really happy and blessed and grateful to feel included in the women that you called to, share their work.
Definitely. And we hope you will not be a stranger. Like I said, our platform is always open to our people out here that are teaching nationalist and Pan-Africanist principles in real practical ways. I want to say to the family watching that it costs you nothing. I sound like a preacher. It costs you nothing to take your finger right now and click on that subscribe button. Nothing at all, but it helps us out a lot. We just passed over 6,000. We're trying to get to hundreds of thousands. I see stuff. I'm not going to knock other people, so I'm not going to do that. But I see stuff on YouTube that I just millions of. I'm like, wow, that's just playing a game. Wow, they're just literally playing a game and showing you. And I'm like, wow, if we can get our people to that place, man, listen. So please help us out, family. The more subscribers we have, the more we're able to do, and most importantly, the more of you we're able to reach with Black nationalist, Pan-Africanist thought, liberation theory, organizing, and things of that nature. So thank you for tuning in. If you are just coming on, you came on late, it's going to record in about 5 minutes. Come back, or when you have time, and check it out. Even if you got to check it out in parts, check it out, family. It's very important. Sister Nwasha, thank you. Keep doing that wonderful work. And I've committed, I said, I have to take some classes with you and your husband. I want to understand this. I want myself and my queen, with her permission and with her agreement, to practice Akoma Day. I know she was
Mhm.
talking about that recently. So I like to get more involved with that because I have a lot to learn with respect to that. I think we all do. So thank you very much. That's what we want to say.
Well,
And
you're definitely invited. So we'll send out an invite into our Black Love School meeting so you can join us. This summer is all about the heat of love and intimacy and sex. But every season we go into a different category. That is part of what we need to know. So you're absolutely invited. We can't wait to have you. And you've got a couple months to get ready for Akoma Day.
all right, you heard that, Queen. If you still watching, you heard what we talking about for the summer. Behave yourself, young lady. Okay, if you watching, behave yourself. All right, Sister Nwasha, thank you so much, my sister. Have a blessed day. Give our love and
Akoma.
greetings to the King, and we will be in touch. And with
See you
that said,
soon.
family, peace and black power. Wukusu, wake up, clean up, stand up. 3-part outline. Wake up. Get that consciousness right. Aware of who you are, where you come from. Clean up. Be self-corrective. Be humble. Find out what's going on with you. What are your self-defeating behaviors that you need to tame and eliminate? And finally, stand up. Exert leadership in your community. Take your gifts and talents and don't just share it with your family. Go out into the larger community and make sure that you make a difference. Just like our sister Nwasha is doing. Thank you so much, my sister.
Akoma.
Peace.